Okay. Okay. Hi, my name is Michael Specjalski. We are coming back with Michael Werbowski. That we had a conversation for in two parts in Polish, because Michael Werbowski is a Canadian, a journalist, and can say he knows about geopolitics, interior relations in Canada, but also international relations regarding the Russian-Ukraine conflict. And we spoke in Polish for our Polish viewers, for our geopolitical spaces, so the portal that I'm running, Michael Specjalski. But now we had our Ian Snow, a carpenter from Live On Media from New York. So we're gonna shift, of course, to English, and we're gonna have a discussion of some more general topics that are interesting for our viewers that speak English from United States, Canada, but also other parts of the world. Okay, so hi Michael, hi Ian. How are you guys?
Good to be with you. Good to be with you.
Okay. Okay.
Good to see you. Good to see you, yeah.
Nice to meet you, Michael.
Pleasure.
You're a Canadian.
Polish Canadian, yes.
That's a good country too.
I know, Ian, that you have something in common with Canada.
Yes, I lived there for many years. I have dual citizenship. So I was born in Los Angeles, California, but I lived in Toronto for many years and got to go into Quebec and got to go to British Columbia. And so I'm quite familiar with Canada.
That's nice. So we have this connection, Polish, Canadian, United States connection. So we have the links. so it should be quite interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start. Yeah. So Michael, we are discussing, but Michael is our guest, so we're gonna ask Michael because what you mentioned, Michael, before we start recording, that you would like to speak about the candidacy of Robert Kennedy Jr. To the office, to the presidential office of United States, that is going to run for the nominee of the Democratic Party, as his father and so on. So he has a person and a politician that has a really strong, of course, name not only in the United States but in the whole world. And we know that Robert Kennedy Jr. is an interesting politician because he was opposing this globalistic agenda, the lockdowns, this pandemic measures that now are going into the audience that they were not so much correct that the government said that they should be. So we are saying about the forced vaccinations, for instance, but basically how the vaccinations were working. So he in his agenda, first of all, is this anti-globalistic, we can say, agenda, but also he also supports de-escalation of United States involvement in this war on Ukraine. And we know that, of course, now the president is the President Biden, which is also a candidate, a president and a politician from the Democratic Party, so the same party as Kennedy. So let's start with this question: how do you see this candidacy from your perspective in this field that I mentioned? So this anti-globalistic and also rivalry with Biden for the nominee of the Democratic Party, because we know that there are a lot of politicians, but also supporters of Democratic Party that are not supporting this hawkish liberal interventionism policy that is run by, for instance, Victoria Nuland regarding Ukraine. So could you give your introduction to this topic of his candidacy and what it could change in the United States policy, but also globalistic policies?
Am I supposed to answer, or
Yeah,
Mr. Ian?
just elaborate what you like to say.
I'll give the floor to Ian because he's the American. He's closer to the action.
Okay. And Ian has also experience of his own with campaigns, because he was also in campaigns of Ron Paul, so also a politician that were a non-interventionism politician. So let's hear from Ian. How you see Ian this candidacy of Kennedy?
Unexpected, and I mean, I hope it's a good thing, and I hope that he doesn't get killed. The heads of a lot of people. I'm able to get it. I'm able to understand it. Not that I'm more intelligent, but just that I follow these things pretty as best I can. Robert F. Kennedy coming into the election is unexpected, and I'm greatly relieved that he is going to be a part of the discussions. Already the things that he has said are resonating with people who follow politics, and it's such a good thing. It's a really great thing that he's entered the race, and I pray to God that nothing bad happens to him.
Yes, so we know that the Kennedys, of course, have this long run of problems regarding not only some accidents but also killings. Of course, like we know the main President Kennedy was assassinated because he touched some hardcore deep state interests in that times. And also Kennedy Jr. Is also doing the same, because he's touching the military complex interests in one side, and then and also some pharmaceutical globalistic policies from big pharma and big tech. So I think that your opinion is quite understandable. Okay, and Michael, how do you see as a Canadian for this candidacy of Kennedy?
Well, like Ian said, I'm on board with boundless enthusiasm for his candidacy, but that doesn't mean anything if you're a non-American. If you're a non-American, first of all, you're very concerned about where the United States is taking us. Now, who is us? Who are we talking about? Well, we're talking about NATO. We're talking about the Western Alliance. We're talking about the G7. It seems that the United States is leading us down the road to hell. And is very concerned about. And so we're just watching and waiting for these elections to take place, because any non-American, I stress this term non-American, is we have a horse, we have skin in this game. The Americans will determine what the geopolitical shifts will look like by the end of the decade. So if the United States wants to thwart China's rise, if the United States wants to destabilize Russia, perhaps destroy, if that's their intent, which I don't think is going to happen, actually. I think that's somewhat delusional to even conceive of such a thing. It could lead to some very catastrophic consequences. But as a non-American, we, meaning Europeans such as myself and the Canadian, are very worried that we will be dragged into wars, further wars, like we have in the past. We were dragged into the Bosnian campaign, the air raids against Serbia under Clinton. We were dragged into Iraq, the quagmire and catastrophe of Iraq. we were dragged in before that, excuse me, between Bosnia and Iraq 2003, we had Afghanistan. So Canada was dragged into that, so was France, so was Poland. And we get dragged into these, military adventurous ventures that don't end well for us in the West and make us look as belligerents who have hegemonic intentions and are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is spreading freedom and democracy. We're basically replacing one despot with another. So it doesn't make us look good in the third world. Why do I give a flying F word? Well, because if I travel to different countries in the third world as a Canadian or as a Pole, I'm concerned about our image and how the third world sees us in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, which I spent some time as a correspondent in Mexico. And believe me, we don't look good down there. So now we're in Ukraine. Doesn't look good for the West at all. The mainstream media can manipulate the situation and delude us into thinking that we're winning after, pumping in over $100 billion into that lost cause. And Robert Kennedy, to get back to Robert Kennedy's candidacy, seems to be the alternative to Trump, a very viable alternative to Trump. And as I mentioned, I'm sorry if I plug my Twitter space, Geopolitics Today, we discussed this. If I was an American, I would vote for Robert Kennedy. I'm a staunch Trump supporter, but I would vote for Kennedy because he has mastered the geopolitical game. And he would be very adept as an American president, and he would be able to talk to China, he would talk to Russia, and do business, just like Trump wants to do, and without using the big stick too often. What is it, Teddy Roosevelt? I think Ian knows that expression better than I do, who said, walk quietly, to paraphrase him, walk quietly and carry a big stick. And that's what Kennedy would do. He wouldn't go around like the current neocon administration, threatening, intimidating countries that do not do what the Washington consensus diktat tells them to do. He would work with the allies, not bully them, as the current Biden administration is doing. So to summarize, I think he has a good chance, and he will eat away at the Biden's base, definitely. And he's going to make it to the convention, I think. So as a non-American, I wish him well, and I wish that he could eat away at Biden's base and perhaps even win the nomination.
Okay, see, Michael is saying that from his perspective, Kennedy not only split the electorate of Democrats and maybe help Republicans to regain the presidential seat, but he also saying that in his views, also Kennedy can be, he can win the Democratic nominee, and he can be even a competitive person who can beat even Donald Trump. How do you see this after the Biden's first term? Is the estimation of Michael are correct from your perspective?
Is that a question for Michael?
For you.
I think it's a question for Ian, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, for Ian.
I wasn't able to catch it.
Okay,
little bit of a breakup in the audio.
I'm going to repeat it. Yes, I'm going to repeat one more.
Rephrase.
Okay, so my question is, because Michael is saying that Kennedy not only going to split the electorate of Democrats, but also can win the nomination, and also can beat Trump maybe in the in the next election that's going to be in November 2024. So how do you see this? Do you see this, or is too early to to say how it's going to be, or you can have some opinion about it?
I was I was surprised how fast certain elements of mainstream media came out to attack Robert F. Kennedy. I mean, it is hard to listen to him because of the scratchiness in his voice. Okay? It's not hard for me to listen to him anymore because the substance of what he's saying is very deep and creates a lot of clarity. And I think that he probably is the most knowledgeable person that I've heard who's really familiar with American history in the last 50 years, and especially political history and power structures within politics and industry. I've never heard anybody who has the clarity of Robert F. Kennedy before. And he goes into, when he speaks on power and structure and manipulation of government by industry, he goes deeper than Trump has ever gone. So Robert F. Kennedy appears to be highly qualified, appears to be a person of peace and nonviolence. I was surprised that mainstream media, more than a month ago, or right after he was discussing running, started vicious attacks on him. Vicious. And I have had a chance where I took my camera around New York and asked people what they thought about Robert F. Kennedy. And some of them are of the opinion that he is crazy and an anti-vaxxer. And I think this is mainly just people who have got their knowledge base from mainstream media. And we still, for people in media, sometime around 2007, where I started to understand that mainstream media was not telling people the truth. And it just became more pronounced for me every single year. You know, I was thinking about CNN today, and among my circles, nobody even considers CNN anymore. I don't even hear them talked about, or I mean, I avoid CNN programming. And I understand that it's a worldwide company and that you can find CNN in the airports all over the world. And but CNN, for me, does not exist anymore. It just doesn't exist. But I'm a small portion of the population. And for a lot of people, they have not broken the bubble. They haven't seen what CNN is really up to. Or I don't need to just mention CNN, but other mainstream media. So what I'm trying to tell you is, without seeming like a snob and classifying people into educated and undereducated, but there is a small group of people who Robert F. Kennedy is resonating with. We can't even believe that somebody like he would be a candidate. It's fantastic. However, we have a tremendous amount of people who still believe that they've never even questioned mainstream media. And so this is going to be a real problem. And you have a small group of people who are seemingly pretty aware and open-minded, and you still have another group of people who are going to think that Robert F. Kennedy is crazy, and they're going to have a little bit of trouble with him because of his scratchy voice. They may not stay with him. But I hope these things are overcome. And I don't know if you're aware, but the Democratic Party has declared there will be no debates. So I can only say about this that these people are sick. And this is a mental illness problem. This isn't even a strategic problem. This is a mental illness problem on the part of the Democratic Party, that they think that they can proceed without having debates. So I use the word freaky. It's a freaky experience for me to hear that the Democrats are going to waive on their debates. And we've already had that happen in local elections in New York, where certain candidates don't have debates. They don't even have thank you speeches when they win anymore, because they figure the whole thing's in the bag. So Robert F. Kennedy, yes. Joe Biden, no. And the people behind Joe Biden. And we're going through a very freaky experience here in the United States, and it's unclear how it's going to turn out. But I'm relieved that I could get myself out of it mentally, but I don't know how the rest of the country is going to be able to do that. So.
Okay, so you're saying that his Kennedy's electorate base is too small that could counter this mainstream narrative that is supporting Biden, and this is your opinion that maybe he couldn't, break through. But for instance, Trump is.
I'll just say one thing. I mean it. Yeah, well, you're familiar with what's happening to Trump. You know, they've charged him with 7 counts down in Florida. He was charged 2 months ago in New York, and that's for the documents that they say he mishandled. He's been charged with 7 counts. That has over 100 years potentially in prison. Okay? It's over a 100-year prison sentence. He was charged 2 months ago here in New York for what they call the hush money payments that were made to a prostitute. And I believe that has 30 counts. And he also has another lawsuit, which has started 6 weeks ago in New York, where a woman has accused Donald Trump of raping her in a department store, which is across the street from Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue, called Bergdorf Goodman. And 2 months ago, he had another court proceeding underway brought by the Attorney General in New York, Letitia James, and that has to do with manipulating the property of his real estate holdings. So apparently he gave one set of numbers to the IRS for the tax department, and he used a different set of figures for banks when he was getting loans. But people that I talk to say that that case is going to go nowhere, because the IRS, and that's our taxation department, they have one set of requirements. You know, you fill it out and that's it. When you go to a bank and you make a presentation, you can bring all manner of things into that presentation that you don't bring to the IRS. You can mention the fact that in Donald Trump's case that he had a television show, which was one of the highest rated television programs ever for over a decade, and that he has a world recognized brand that, depending on certain types of promotions and activities they do, can increase the value of that brand. So that's just, I'm just referring to that last that last case. But Donald Trump has his hands filled with these lawsuits. So people really are questioning whether he is going to be able to handle the lawsuits and be able to successfully run for president. It'll be dramatic, that's for sure.
Okay, and we're gonna be back. And we're gonna be back in a second for the second part of our discussion today.
Okay.